Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to see so many people here. We're excited for this rich discussion that we're going to have. My name is Dr. Anthony Jackson. I am an alumni of Howard University, and I teach at Howard University as a lecturer, as well as I am an assistant professor of sociology at Bowie State University in Bowie, Maryland. I am one of your co-hosts, and our other co-host, Kim.
Kimberly Moses, and I'll give my introduction right after Anthony gets finished.
Yeah. Again, we just want to welcome you all. This is the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, and this is part of the Deeper Dive Collective. And what we really have been doing is focusing on our understanding of fascism and our vision for a future outside of exploitation and oppression that we've been experiencing in certainly in this moment in more intensified forms, right? What is this? What does it look like? So we held an event before to talk about what defeating fascism looks like. And in this particular event, we want to talk about our vision for the future and how to achieve this. So, okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for coming. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge our tech team for today. Today we have Rand, Peter, Joyce, and Alan. Thank you. You're wonderful. And a special shout out to the leaders of the Rev Ed Committee and Deeper Dive participants for all your hard work and planning to bring this event together. We hold this event acknowledging that we all inhabit on stolen indigenous land. Lastly, we want to stress that this is a safe place to share your thinking and ideas. None of us have all the answers, and it's important that we engage and learn from each other. So again, I thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kimberly. I'm a revolutionary and a member of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, acronym LERNA. And I'm your co-moderator today along with Professor Anthony. This event is sponsored by LERNA. Who is LERNA? We are an organization of revolutionaries from different backgrounds and experiences, working people dedicated to the important work of meeting and joining with each other. Revolutionaries engaged in fighting for the basic needs of the class and obtaining class power needed to transform the system. What do? Our form of direct action is analysis and education. We are dedicated to study and learning with and helping to evaluate the consciousness of other revolutionaries in the workplace, in the classroom, in various organizations, in the street, and in all areas of struggle. We work to politicize raising the issues of private property and the need for class power. This event is one example of the work we do. Our role as revolutionaries is to connect with the thinking of people and to help bring clarity and develop consciousness. Through their motion and inquiry, we help lead revolutionaries from the perception of the problem to understanding the cause and the solution. The voice of the League is our paper, The Rally Comrades, which is accessible from our website at lerna.org. We encourage you to visit the Rally Comrades site, read, share, and subscribe. So we're going to begin our event today we're going to be discussing 3 questions. So the whole agenda for today is about 90 minutes, unless it just gets real good to us. And there's 20 minutes per question. There'll be 3 minutes per response. And again, to remind you to put any comments or any other questions that you have in the chat. Okay, and with that, I'm going to start with a little introduction to question one and then go into our question. Since our last event in October, there have been bomb threats at HBCUs, book bannings, broad attacks against all public institutions, particularly public education, and the teaching of accurate American history across the US. And most recently, an invasion and war in Ukraine by Russia. Question number one, what does it mean that we live in a white supremacist, patriarchal class society with massive death, destruction, and war? And how can we reimagine a classless society and peace for humanity?
So before we jump into the question, I just want to set some context before to help us really contextualize what's happening in this current moment now. Capitalism is dehumanizing, and its birth gave rise to the multidimensional expressions of alienation, exploitation, oppression, and violence. The total degradation of humanity is not a byproduct of capitalism. On the contrary, it is contingent upon its survival. The dialectics of power within the capitalist system holds that as capital grows in power, workers will be forced into survival as the inalienable human right to simply live, to life, exists, really becomes a luxury only afforded to the few who can afford it. We are dying, and so is our planet, because capitalism's existence is tied to ours. But as revolutionaries, we know that humanity's existence is not bound to it. Death and destruction under the system of capitalism is not simply a subjective view to either accept or reject, but an objective reality that is observable and must be stopped at all costs to save humanity and the planet. Black folks have a saying: when a person comes to a point of cultural revelation and enlightenment, when we have developed a race consciousness, a critical awareness of history and culture, when we begin to understand and can identify exploitative and oppressive forces that shape our lived experiences and how we must not perpetuate the harm done unto us, we call this being woke. The origins of our conceptual understanding of being woke develops out of the Black community as a term of endearment to emphasize the significance of overcoming an institutionalized miseducation that adversely impacts our people. However, being woke can be applied to all people who experience marginalization, alienation, exploitation, and oppression. The principal core of being woke is about developing a liberatory consciousness through revolutionary education that enlightens, empowers, and stirs up a conviction in the individual to rehumanize themselves towards engaging in transformative action. Paulo Freire reminds us that, and I quote, "It is only when the oppressed find the oppressors out and become involved in the organized struggle for their liberation that they begin to believe in themselves. This discovery cannot be purely intellectual, but must involve action, nor can it be limited to mere activism, but must include serious reflection. Only then will it be a praxis," end quote. Under the capitalist regime, white supremacy has been centered, continuously alienating humanity and imposing upon us, workers all over the globe, a bourgeois worldview. We must recenter humanity and our stories as a multiracial, multicultural, multi-gendered, and multinational and multi-generational working class people. We must use revolutionary education as a tool of enlightenment that moves our individual identities and our collective realities as workers from the periphery of a white supremacist and capitalist worldview to the center, viewing ourselves as subjects of history, as fully human, and not as objects of capitalist class domination, as commodities to be bought and sold on the market. We must encourage each other to stay woke, because capitalism will kill us in our sleep. And although the system will make every attempt to kill us with our eyes open, we sure will give it a hell of a fight. And with enough of us united, empowered, and in support of one another, we can and will win and hold our victory. We can and will make real our lasting vision for the future of humanity and the planet. Today, we are here to put our hearts and our minds and our revolutionary spirits together to discuss what our vision is for the future and what will it take to get there. So as Kim mentioned, we'll be getting into 3 questions. Do you want to give us more context before we revisit the first one, Kim?
No, you did excellent, but I will reread the first question.
Okay.
What does it mean that we live in a white supremacist patriarchal class society with massive death, destruction, and war? And how can we reimagine a classless society and peace for humanity? Now, that's a lot in there.
Yeah, let's jump straight in.
Yeah.
Who wants to tackle the first question?
This is Peter in tech support with a note. I will be watching both the chat and the hand raising. So if you want to raise your hand digitally or ask to be on stack in chat, I will take that and I'll call on you. And if I miss you, feel free to chat Peter tech support.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Peter.
I see Mario's hand is raised. Mario Galvin. You want to unmute yourself, Mario, and speak?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I would just like to raise the question, if we're talking about a classless society as our goal, why do we struggle for class power? It seems like as we define ourselves as working class, we're reinforcing the capitalist system that, you know, there's the owners, the workers, et cetera, that whole structure of exploitation that we're struggling against. It's like, to me, it seems like by calling ourselves workers, we're buying into that system. Whereas if we really are talking about creating a classless society, we need to start visualizing ourselves as like part of the world. You know, there's like a human race, you know, multi-ethnicity, multilingual, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I think that's kind of a little stumbling block in our path as we move forward to say, well, we're workers. That means we recognize the owners and the other class that we're going to be struggling against, instead of envisioning ourselves as one humanity that should all be equal and that we should share the world. Real quickly, I know other people need to talk, but if we consider ourselves, instead of the workers of the world, as actually, maybe the indigenous view, we're part of the world, and that whatever wealth is created from nature, it should be shared by everyone, not by, you know, the wealthy people. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. One thought I had just briefly about, you know, what you mentioned, I think this is part of a process, and we're in a process, and we're still in a system that was designed to create exploitation and to be undemocratic. So in that, we acknowledge kind of where we are and, you know, where we have to get to, but, you know, well taken. Any other comments?
What does it mean for white supremacy to be at the center of our worldview?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean for capitalist morals and values to be at the center of our worldview? Storm?
Hi, I'm Storm Daniels. I'm a biology major at Howard University. I wanted to just chime in on the white supremacy thing. I kind of feel like we've always been told growing up, you know, it's a white man's world, and a lot of our political leaders, a lot of our doctors, a lot of our lawyers, a lot of powerful men we see in society, it's usually men. It's not usually Black women or Black men. It's usually white men who control everything. So I really wanted to go off to the last speaker's thing, how our natural resources, I feel like they shouldn't be dictated by a group of white men in the office. I feel like it should be shared amongst the Commonwealth. And when it comes to white supremacy, I feel like white people who are in power should take into account that white supremacy is a real thing and it affects everyone. It doesn't just affect, themselves, that the decisions they make affect people who aren't superior, who don't have those type of advantages in life. So I feel like when you have that type of power and your skin color has that type of power, that you should use it to benefit everyone and everyone's well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Rosemary's hand.
Okay. Go ahead, Rosemary.
A call for class. A call for class.
It's actually me, Kimberly. I'm at Rosemary's house, so I had a question, or I had something to say. Hi, everyone. What I think, why I think it's important to talk about class is the fact that there's a ruling class that is destroying our chance for a future. There is a class that is destroying the earth. There is a class that is causing homelessness, that is refusing to stop COVID from spreading, that is allowing Jeff Bezos to accumulate everything while other people are dying. That if we don't understand that there's a ruling class that is doing that is controlling our government and that is controlling society, then we won't. You kind of have to know your enemy in order to fight forward. You have to understand the cause of the problems that we have. And at this point, my understanding is it's this ruling class that legally is allowed to dominate our society because of the laws that allow capitalism and, under a dying system. So anyway, I just think it's really important to understand. And that whole class system was built up based on white supremacy, genocide, slavery. But now there are some people of color that are a part of the ruling class in various ways and certainly act in its interests. But ultimately, we have to understand that there is a ruling class and we have to become a classless society where we're all equal. Thank you.
On stack, we have, someone has taken their hand down. We have Jordan, Sevi, and Ethel in that order. Jordan, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, is it okay if I have my camera off or I need to cut it on?
It's just fine.
Okay. So just speaking on the class system and its role in the question that we're answering, I agree with what Ms. Rosemary said about the class system being built on the foundations of basically white supremacy and those ideals. But I also feel like we have to look at the uses of the class system as well, although they have caused destruction, and it's more about the roles that those in higher classes play and what they choose to do with their roles as a higher class citizen. I feel like if there were, this might be unrealistic, but just a way to make the class system a lot more neutral than what it is. So where higher class citizens are allowed to demean lower class citizens. So if it was something where it was on a neutral basis through every class, there's no one higher, no one lower, each person plays the same role, although we're in different classes. I feel like that may make it less destructive or less demeaning, or more of a way where all resources are used to help, either if it's not within the class, within other classes as well. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Okay, we have Sevi, Ethel, and then Yolanda has asked to speak. And there's an interesting comment from Lily in chat that the moderators might want to look at.
Okay.
Hello. So there is a book that revolutionaries, I believe, should be aware of that I've started reading. It's called Life After Fossil Fuels, and it's by Alice J. Friedman, and she worked in the energy sector. And in the book, she goes through our dependence on fossil fuels for things like manufacturing, hauling goods to and from our stores. And she goes over that oil and fossil fuels, I'll just list a couple examples. They are required in manufacturing to heat up the manufacturing equipment to sufficient levels to produce all the conveniences of modern life. Computer chips, our clothes are also often made from oil. And I found a book, and the other example she gives is our trucks and our run on oil. And she goes through each of the alternative energy sources, and she finds them all lacking these properties that oil has. And she advocates a return to a wood-based world, because the only alternative energy source that she found that can be heated up to these temperatures that are required is wood. There is a book review that I found before I joined this conference. I'd be happy to place that in the chat. It's a very good summary of the book. So that's what I wanted to say, and yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Ethel, Yolanda, and now Wiley will be third.
So,
yes,
but before you start, Ethel, there was a good comment in the chat, and maybe you could also direct some of your comments towards. So Lily had mentioned, I think, an adjacently related but important question in the context of this conversation is to define what fascism is. Fascism as well as fascism historically, and how these definitions connect to capitalism, white supremacy, and so forth. Because I think fascism functions by how unspecific a term it can often be. If it's defined, it is easier to link it to other systems of oppression.
thank you. Should I go now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for directing my attention to the statement by Damon, because I think it's excellent. And I also think I want to thank the conveners and presenters, because this is wonderful. It's so timely. We're living through such a tumultuous period in human history that is requiring that we as human beings understand that we have to intervene on behalf of humanity. And that is truly a part of our historic responsibility on behalf of the international wretched of the earth, quite frankly. So I wanted to go back to Mario's question, which I think people have spoken to. And I think what Anthony's comments open us up to is that we're looking in a meeting like this, we're looking at both where are we right now? And so that means we still live under a capitalist economy. It's imploding. It's destroying the earth. It's destroying, it's taking human life. However, just as Mario and I think the sister who just spoke addressed, we have to have a vision of a reconstructed world. I was going to say a reconstructed America, but a reconstructed America would go a long way to allowing other parts of the world to be free. Now, then I just wanted to take the liberty to read what Brother Damon put into the chat, because I would like to ground us in a historical view, which I think is part of what the purpose of this discussion is. And here we say, or he says, got it. The history of all hitherto existing societies have been the history of class struggle. Now, when class struggle is over and when real human history begins, what does history mean? Up to this point, I think history has meant the development of the means of production. Uh-oh, that just jumped up, sorry. And the societies reorganizing on that basis. In that sense of the word, it has only been a mass record. It has been a mass record of action and reaction. What we are talking about now is the ability of human beings to grab hold of themselves and their destiny and create a history of accomplishments rather than this action and reaction. Accomplishments will be things that we choose to do, not that which we have to do, but which things we choose to do. And that is a quote from Nelson Peary, "The future is up to us," in his writing, "The future is up to us." I probably am over my time and I apologize. So I'm not going to try to tackle the fascism, except for just to say, we are looking at a human history careening. One side of the, on one side of this issue is, will human beings be able to step in and both save ourselves and right our relationship with nature, or will corporate dictators? And I think this is so important, because we're not just talking about random authoritarianism. We're talking about a particular form of rule where the ruling class, through corporations, have legal, formal control of the government to ensure their class interests. So this piece I just read very much emphasized the question of class and the role of it, and why the role of power. And Mario, to get to the vision that we want, you stated we have to recognize that our class has to have power to establish the priorities of human beings and the planet. And I'm sorry that I took so long.
Thank you. Peter, did you have a comment that you wanted to make, or?
I do. I'll try to be quick. I think the discussion about white supremacy is absolutely crucial for our people in this time, because our ruling class is absolutely dependent on white supremacy as a way of keeping us disunited and fighting among ourselves. While it's absolutely true that white supremacy has been used to look down on people who are not white and to overvalue whiteness, it's also vital to look at how white supremacy has been used on white people, on the majority of white people. Mm-hmm. It's assumed that all white people are intimately connected with the system, and permanently so. And the privileges that I have enjoyed through my family history are privileges that were granted but not owned. In other words, I don't own anything like the ruling class owns. I don't own that kind of property. And so much of what we consider white privilege is bribery to behave in accordance with the needs of our ruling class. Mm-hmm. And I think Nick Estes, who's one of the leaders of the indigenous motion and the Red Nations, said, white supremacy was created to control white people. And they did that by telling white people, we like you, we're going to take care of you. And you're not us, but you can wave at us and we'll wave at you. And so it's really important to me to understand that white supremacy has been used to disable, to politically cripple white people as a large group in this country for 200 years. And I think that with the George Floyd rebellions, we saw one of the first major cracks in that, when large numbers of young white people went into the streets to say, no, we do not accept this anymore. And that is strategically important for us, in addition to its absolute moral importance.
Very good. Thank you, Peter. I do have a comment as well. And it made me think when Ms. Kim mentioned Jeff Bezos, right? And also Mario's earlier comment about, statements of being part of the working class and needing to have a vision of a classless society that shares in all of the wealth that this country produces, right? The mission statement for Amazon, they may have changed it, but their initial mission statement was to take over the world. So to me, that indicates that there was a wanton belief in being part of the owning class, the ruling class, based on what his belief was, possibly being a white male. And he actually has succeeded to do that. The whole mission of white supremacy, as Peter mentioned, is to divide and to make sure that the masses do not unite and realize and have a level of consciousness that they are a class, and to continue to perpetuate the system. That's what it's designed to do. So is there any other comments? We're getting close to our end for this question. But if anyone else has anything burning that they want to speak on or add, some very good comments in the chat as well.
I'd like to talk our Yolanda.
Okay, Yolanda, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just recommend that we read the book by Nelson Perry and Brooke Haggerty, Moving Onward from Racial Division to Class Unity. I read that pamphlet and I recommended it to people online. And it's a very good book because it talks about the historical divide and conquer tactics to keep the slaves, the Black slaves and the mental servants from rebelling and standing up to slavery against it. So I would truly recommend that the League publish that book again and that it is advertised. Other than that, to me, it is very important to I don't know how to maybe educational concept that people needs to have about what is exploitation, how does capitalism work, because a lot of people think that it's the companies that have the money, their right to do and say what they want to say. They don't understand that profits known before, now it's money, come from our labor. And if we could have education come something that could be distributed in rally comrades, I don't know if it's possible. I would appreciate something like that. The other thing is that I believe in Cuba, they started small businesses and they were successful because after the Soviet Union was collapsed and they could no longer help Cuba, Cuba had to be creative. So yeah, I think that's very important to have those education columns about what profits come from and why. And I haven't I'm going through some health issues and I would like to join the league and I'm ready to listen to abolition of private property. And there's something else I can discuss now or later, depending on time. It's a law Newsom wants to bring to all of California that will make mental health and drug addiction treatment a requirement of all homeless people. To me, it smacks of fascism because I know there was an article when I left Curb a few years ago by Jack Hirschman and Chava Poloni. Somebody contributed an article that mental health medication shortens the life of the patients that take it. If the homeless are forced to take that, be part of that California new plan, it's called Care Health, then they would, part of it means drugs also being put in barracks that look like concentration camps. That's fascism. So I hope, okay.
My apologies for missing you, Yolanda. And did we ever get to Wiley? And just a brief announcement. This event is being live streamed at the Learna Facebook page. There are 2 links to it now in the chat. So participants, you can copy and paste those and send them to your friends. We're very, very sorry about these limitations we're suffering. We're going to have to find out why this happened.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just one brief comment on the question previously on class and white supremacy. And I think someone has already spoken to it. Class has little meaning outside of the concept of class struggle. There's a ruling class and there's a class that's oppressed by the ruling class. And the struggle between them is a motive force of society and development, as the previous speaker pointed out. Second point I'd like to speak to is on the question of white supremacy. Like everything else, white supremacy has a history. And obviously, history is one that's in the service of the ruling class. And I think the important question we need to raise is, what is the origin of white supremacy? And more basically, what is the origin of whiteness and blackness? And indeed, what is the origin of the concept of race? And if we explore those concepts, what we will find is that race does not, the modern concept of race does not predate capitalism. In fact, arises and developed simultaneously with capitalism. And we further find that white supremacy happens to be the most virulent, most despicable, most deadly form of race and racism, because it's associated with the most deadly and pernicious form of capitalism. So in terms of addressing the question of white supremacy, I think it's very important to understand it as a historically evolved ideology in behalf and in the service of the ruling class. And that it's their major weapon today in the class struggle against the working class. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, so we're about to enter our second question. And Anthony will present that to you all.
Yeah, I thought that was a good segue, especially considering all of the forces that are used to divide us. I think that's something that has been uplifted throughout all of the different speakers. People talking about the ways in which exploitation and oppression has manifested and how it continues to adversely impact our working class communities, but also what is it going to take for us to overcome these tools of division, these things that are used as tools of division that divide us? How can we overcome them and really realize that we have one collective reality of exploitation and oppression? And question 2 really speaks to, how do we unify these sections of the working class that can be unified across diversity with respect to race, nation, gender, religion, region, as a united and collective force for revolutionary change? Like, that is the unity presupposes, right, really this revolutionary change to abolish private property and the political forces that protect it. How can we do this? How can we unify towards these ends? Yeah, it's a deep question.
It is.
It's dense. I feel the pause. Oh, we have somebody want to jump in.
Yeah, Gideon.
Yeah, hello. So I think at a base level, like, education is probably the only way that it's going to work, and it's the best time for it now because I guess education is so unruly or not rigid, and like you can learn in so many different places, with social media being a factor as opposed to like before, where like word of mouth is really the only thing you could have. And I think it's going to be hard to kind of I guess allow that type of education to flourish, but I feel like I've seen it before, and just not the methods that necessarily I would approve. I'm Black, and I like in the Black community, I feel like recently there's been a lot of talk about like Black capitalism, and honestly, like kind of overtaken at least the people I'm around and I've seen, and like I've seen a lot of people just very invested in that. And I feel like maybe that might be because it's still an extension of capitalism where it's like it's easier for like, you know, I don't think that's the end goal. So maybe like people are like, okay, well, they're talking about that. They think it's gonna let them win. So we'll let that slide. But I still think it proves that like people are capable of disseminating information that they think is valuable. If you're able to turn a younger generation into thinking something like a classist society is valuable, then they're going to, no matter what, let that education go, especially as young people who are like generally the revolutionaries, the ones that are gonna like do a different type of change that, you know, that they're just gonna break out of a certain mold. I feel like if you can plant that seed properly into thinking like this is what's going to let you flourish truly, and it's just going to do like a ripple effect where everybody is going to be so invested in teaching themselves and teaching the people around them that this is the method that we can do this way. And once again, like I said, because of things like social media and all of that stuff, it is the most prime time to do it. So that's what I'm hoping for, at least.
Very good. Thank you.
We have Kennedy wishing to speak.
Hi, I'm Kennedy Massey. I'm a mechanical engineering major at Howard University. In kind of going like hand in hand with that, I think that we have to focus on who's sitting at the table. So the main people that we need to talk, that need the conversation, we're the ones that like, we're here. We voluntarily want to be here to get this information because we don't want to see this like continue to go on and progress the way that it has been for years and decades. But bringing in those capitalists, bringing in, and not even a conversation where what you're doing is, you know, we're completely against it, but facilitating an environment and an opportunity in which like kind of a round table type of talk where nobody feels like they're being like, you know, come after, because people shut down like that. But it's the capitalists, the ones that are ultimately running our country into the ground, that need to be at these facilitated talks. That I think that's the only way that change will start to, you know, happen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on staff?
Do we think that it's possible for ruling class, capitalist class, bourgeois folk to voluntarily give up their power, or will we have to take it?
I think we have to take it.
I think somebody has to. I can't answer that.
Yeah, I know. Can't answer our own question, huh? So we have some people on stack, Peter. I don't know who was first.
Oh, sorry. I see Damon. I'm multitasking here.
I think Rhiannon. I saw Rhiannon's hands first.
Rhiannon, Kennedy, and then Ethel. And Damon. And I'm sorry, I was multitasking and I don't have the proper order. So I'm just going to go in that order. Rhiannon, please unmute, and then Kennedy, Ethel, and Damon.
Just a point of order. There's a request in the chat to have the question repeated by Mr. Mario.
Okay, let me go ahead and do that now then.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna post the first two questions in the chat.
Okay, and then I'll read the second one. How will we unify the sections of the working class who can be unified across our diversity, race, nationality, gender, religion, and region, as a united and collective force for revolutionary change to abolish private property and the political forces that protect and secure it, that protect it? And how do we secure the peace?
So Rehannon, Kennedy, and then Damon, and then Ethel, I think.
Okay.
While Walter's in, I'm stepping back so someone else who hasn't spoken can speak.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rehannon Harney-Capra. I'm a student of Dr. Jackson's. I'm a psychology major in the pre-med track. And I just wanted to follow up with his previous question about if the bourgeoisie can voluntarily step down from their role. And in my opinion, as someone who's recently coming into age and like our society, it's a little bit pessimistic, but I don't believe that they necessarily can. I mean, looking at America and the hundreds of years of history that we know of, the bourgeoisie, they've always been in power, and we rest in a society that's built on a power dynamic that's meant to be unfair. So once you have a taste of that glory, that power, who's going to want to willingly give it up? And that's not to say that people don't reflect on their actions and are conscious, I would want to say, but once you have that taste, it's so hard to give up. And so why would they want to? And I feel as if that power dynamic was broken down to answer the question about unifying us as a working class, if it were to be broken down, we would reach our goal slowly, one step at a time. But there's so many necessary actions that need to be taken that haven't, and most likely won't be, because we've had the opportunity to do so. And it's been mentioned how many times throughout our society, and yet it's neglected time and time again.
Okay, so thank you, Rehannon. I'm seeing Kennedy, Damon, Shania, Mario, and Stephen.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kennedy Ross. I'm also a student of Professor Jackson's. I'm a biology major at Howard University. And to touch on basically what Rehannon was saying, I think also that the bourgeoisie class will not give up their power, because I mean, like, if, like she was saying, like, if you have that much power, like, who's gonna want to give it up? Now, it's like, to talk about like unifying the sections of the working class, I think what we need to look at is like not like defining the working class by certain like divisions like race, nation, gender. I think that's where we need to start, because that's a problem now, like how we divide things like working class, ruling class. So I think like we need to get like rid of all of those like factors that like, you know, put certain people in certain groups, and that we just all need to just unify on one collective thought. Thank you.
Very good.
I believe Damon is next.
I want to deal with that question about the ruling class and what's going to be necessary to dislodge them. There's no precedent in the history of civilization where a ruling class stepped down from the stage of history voluntarily. They've always had to be knocked down. Now, whenever the US goes into other countries and invades them, they never say, we're going to go in there and violently invade and overthrow. They always say, we're going to go in there and use necessary force. So ultimately, the question becomes, what will be the necessary force to dislodge this ruling class? And ultimately, also, they are the ones that are going to decide that, not us. What is it going to take for us to overthrow that system and establish our own dictatorship, a proletarian dictatorship versus their bourgeois dictatorship? And once again, it's not a question of how much violence or anything like that. It's a question of what is going to be necessary.
Thank you. So I missed someone who wanted to be in stack. Waldo is on stack. I'm going to place her in the middle after Stephen Miller. So we've got Shania, Mario, Stephen, Walda, Aaliyah.
And Wiley as well.
Oh, I saw Wiley and now I don't.
Just put it in.
Oh, okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to say I agree with everything that's been said thus far, and I just want to touch on further on what Damon just spoke on, the necessary force, and also circle back to the beginning where we started with education. I think that that is a piece of the necessary force, and specifically educating in ways that allow everyone to see just how similar everyone is, because it was already said that a lot of emphasis is placed on differences, whether it be religion, nationality, race, so on and so forth. But if we take the time to educate first how similar everyone really is, and then further on education on capitalism and every other force that's been put upon us as the oppressed, as the other than the bourgeoisie. I think once that has been established, it will be easier for collectively for everyone to move forward, because it's hard to, on a major scale, to work with others when the main focus is difference and not cohesion and similarity. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mario.
Thank you. I think this is a really important question, maybe the very most important of all, because I actually believe that we really already have the power. You know, we're talking about changing the system. I mean, if we really have a democracy and we have the vote, we've all heard, we are the 99%. We are the overwhelming majority of the population. Yet we're somehow allow ourselves to be manipulated by the propaganda, whatever they do, you know, by the lies, threats of violence, you know, threats, I think in a way that poverty in this country is created on purpose just to make people afraid of losing their jobs. You know, they didn't ship all those. I mean, that's part of shipping all of the good paying jobs overseas. And, you know, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes I think that these economic crashes, you know, 2007, maybe even the Great Depression back in the 20s, are actually created artificially, you know, because what happens in those periods is that the rich people come up and buy everything real cheap again and start selling it back to us. So really, just to get right to the point, I think the answer is we need to stop letting ourselves be controlled by the political two-party system. I point out over and over again to my friends, there is not a single word in the US Constitution about political parties, yet these entities have crept up out of somewhere and have taken over control of the government with money, basically, and of course, intimidation, and don't let anyone else in. So our great challenge is the first part, unity. How do we come together outside of the political system? That's something we have to create. And I don't know if it should be another political party, because again, that's like playing into the system we're trying to change. So that's the great challenge that we need a creative answer to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Steve, and we have a number of new people on stack.
Hello, everybody. I'm a retired teacher from Oakland, California. When we look at the bizarre antics of some of these fascists, it's easy to dismiss them, but we really should look at and understand that they have a massive structure behind them that they've put in place over decades. The Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, we're not even talking about dark money here, but that plays more and more a role in everything. We see that they've really reinforced the fascist use of social media. It's easy to miss in January the 6th that there was really a coordinated inside-outside strategy. the same day, the people inside who supported them started moving to defend the people who invaded the Capitol, etc. This isn't a joke, and it's not going to go away. They are crippling voting rights. They're closing schools. They're politicizing masks. And now we have trucker convoys. And so we see that regardless of what we think about it, these guys aren't just going to all of a sudden stop and say, okay, we did it. We had a trucker convoy. No, the next one is coming up soon, being brought to you by, we don't know who yet, but it'll be here. And we see that the impact of what goes on in the antics in the public, like the trucker convoy, leads to all kinds of laws that are being passed to just restrict what can be taught in schools, to threaten teachers, to have parents be able to take your job just by objecting to something that you're doing. And so I think the conclusion is that we really are up against a rising fascist movement that intends to win. They're not going to go away. They support a vision of capitalism that's the worst possible vision any society could have. They've already fed the choice of both parties to put the corporations in charge of the pandemic that's led to the death of over 1 million people in this country. These cats are not going to stop. And so the question is, how do we oppose this? And how do we build the movement that's necessary by opposing that? And it's very clear that everything they have to offer is nothing but ideology, violence, and let's go backwards. So this touches on everybody's absolute basic need to have a place to live, to have decent food, to have an adequate way of surviving in a society that's based on commodities. And we're just going to have to grapple with it at that level. Ideology is all fine, but everybody needs support for their kids who are in preschool. And we could go on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I believe we have Aaliyah next, followed by Ethel, if she still wants to speak, Kennedy, and then Chase. I think I've got everybody.
Did you get Wiley in there?
I'm sorry, Wiley. I thought you already spoke. Go ahead.
No, am I up?
You are on.
All right. Just a couple of brief comments. First, it's really refreshing to hear all these young people here. I'm an old dude, and it's really refreshing to hear the thinking that's going on. I have two comments. First, on the question, I think it's the key, as somebody mentioned earlier, is education, because that's how we're going to unite our class. And that education is an education which aims to help our class understand itself as a class, because it's only with that kind of understanding that we're going to be able to defeat the class enemy. There is no compromise with this class enemy, and it has nothing to do with his head. It has everything to do with the objective development of society and history. I mean, things are happening which are beyond his ability to control, and the way he's trying to deal with it is by frustrate the forward motion of the people. And that's what we have to understand. The other thing, I think the point that made by Stephen Miller is extremely important. But the key point is they do none of this without thinking, planning, and educating themselves to what is necessary for them to maintain their class rule. So education for them is very important. Their education is aimed against history. Our education is aimed at furthering history. So I make that point because I want people to, I want to try to make the contribution that, you know, education is extremely important at this time. And what I mean by education is understanding the nature of the system, what we're dealing with, namely capitalism and its inevitable course of development and the effect that it has on people. Right now, it is a very parasitic thing, which is eating itself up. when we look at the millions of people that are dying behind this pandemic, those deaths are preventable. They exist because they represent capitalism's struggle to maintain itself at the expense of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of people on stack who have spoken. If it's okay, I'd like to go to 3 people who have not spoken yet.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go to Aaliyah, then Walda, then Kennedy, then Chase, followed by Yolanda and Ethel.
Hello.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. I wanted to go back to Professor Jackson's question about if the bourgeoisie will be willing to let go of their power, and I don't think so at all, especially when they've been profiting off of it for so long and it's benefited them. I honestly believe that it has to be taken from them. Like, I feel like for so long we've been asking to be respected, asking for certain things as just being human beings. And after a while, you have to take what you want in order to get certain things done. And I feel like in this fight, we have to, you have to go hard, because they're going to go hard to make sure things stay in place and stay in line. And they'll have people, soldiers, lawmakers, doctors in these positions to keep everything that they have already in place. And I feel like you have to show them that you're willing to go as hard and fight as hard for what you want, to prove to them that, I guess, to say that I'm just not going to go for anything just because this is what you want. And I also believe that I feel like we kind of have to break away from religion and gender and race, because I feel like it keeps us divided, and it makes us believe that no one's experiencing what you're experiencing because, you know, you're another race or you're another gender or you're in another region. And that's far from the truth, because everyone is experiencing most likely the same things that you are. And I don't know, that's all I had to say.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm going to call on Walda next.
Okay, I was almost going to pass because I really do want to hear more young voices, and I'm an old one. And so much rich stuff has been said, but I just want to sort of try to sum it up. The big lie of white supremacy, of this is a democracy, and of the fact that we should let the ruling class just wreak havoc with our lives is part of the oldest story, right, on the face of the earth, but particularly within capitalism. So I think it is our struggling together, our understanding, our common reality, our common interest as humanity for the basic necessities of life, for peace, for a planet that is not being destroyed. And that will only come about when we understand that we have a common enemy, and it is the ruling class. And they have propagated white supremacy and, you know, gender oppression and nation states. And so I do think that we have to struggle together around what we need. We all need those things. And we have to educate ourselves as we do it. And so we have got to unsilo ourselves and to understand our common humanity and really begin to develop the organizational form. So I'm sort of segueing to question 3. What are the tools? What are the political and educational tools that we have to develop and use together, collectively, across whatever divides the ruling class has thrown up in our faces? And we just have to be stronger, more determined, and really more appreciating that we are 99.999% of everyone and everything that is alive on this earth still. So we need to make sure that we win this struggle for our future and our kids and our grandkids. Pastor.
Thank you, Walden. And yay to the OGs, okay?
So we've got a long list. Kennedy is next, then Chase, Yolanda, Ethel, Storm, Gloria, and Alicia. So Kennedy, please go ahead.
I'll go after speakers who haven't spoken.
Very good.
And then we'll end with you, Ethel, on this question, okay?
This is Kennedy speaking. I just wanted to address this because I think I disagree with a lot of people that have made this point. I think it's extremely detrimental for us to try and remove these classifiers that we fall in, such as race and religion. I think that that's just about the same argument as when we're dealing with like race issues per se, and someone says, I don't see color. Well, I would like you to see my color and treat me the right way, seeing my color. I think that we need to come together given our different backgrounds, and like use those as tools that can be implemented. That we do come from different backgrounds, we do have different identifiers, we do come from different, religions, races, all of that. But in this area, we can come together, we can unite with those differences to make a difference in the world. I think that removing or ignoring those constraints doesn't do much. Like that's what we've been trying to do, and that doesn't do much at all.
Thank you so much, Kennedy, for uplifting that. I do, let me just jump in briefly because I think it's important, right? Not to ignore our differences, but to acknowledge our differences and allow our individual identities to be at the center where humanity is, because that is what makes us human, right? Our differences, everyone is different, not one person is the same. And so if we can acknowledge all of our differences and how they add so much value to the human experience, that is what really the movement needs in moving forward. Something that's going to acknowledge how we differ based on race, nationality, so on and so forth, how we can learn from one another, and how, speaking to education, we can use all of the different things that we have learned from all of our different perspectives to really give breath to a movement that is going to save us all. Because no matter what race you are, no matter what religion you are, no matter where you're in the world, fundamentally, we can unite around life and protecting life and life itself, right? So I thank you so much for uplifting that. We can jump to the next person.
Okay, Chase is next.
Hi, everyone. Is everyone able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, a point that I wanted to make was, I believe that when we talk about these concepts of like, getting rid of capitalism and, creating new systems and stuff, I feel like one of the harder things for people to understand is to actually conceptualize a society where it isn't capitalism. I feel like from the moment that we're born, we're indoctrinated in a transactional society, this whole idea of give and take. And it's hard for us to kind of picture what life would be like outside of capitalism. But there have been years and years of studies on different societies, of different political and economic systems, and all that stuff that we can use, but we just don't study enough or use those studies that people have actually thought through. And there have been societies that have been different. So I feel like when on the topic of education, letting people know of what the potential, what our potential could be if we did change the system, what that would look like. And I feel like that might even make it easier for us to understand, because we're so used to like a give and take, and like, I changed this is going to be our reaction. That might make it easier for people to conceptualize what life would be like without capitalism.
Mhm. Very good. Before we call on the next person, Peter, I just had a quick comment. And that was very good from Chase as well. But, you know, Walter mentioned that we need to understand that we have a common enemy, right? Fascism is the ruling class. They need fascism to be able to hold on to power. It's an offense. From Steve, he mentions that fascism tells us that we are supposed to hate each other for our differences rather than unite based on what we have in common, rooted in our essential needs as human beings. Okay. And the next person on stack, we still got quite a few here.
Yes, next is Yolanda. Yolanda, you want to unmute? Do you still want to speak?
While we wait, do you think we should move into the third question? I think that we've already been tiptoeing into it anyway. So Kim, you want to uplift the third question, and I'll just
I unmuted. I'd like to say something, please. It's important.
Okay.
It is. It's very important. Two things. One is for all to know this thing on the care for the homeless. I'm homeless in California, around the Bay Area, mostly white, except for Oakland, 68% African American. Los Angeles, the same thing, huge amount of African Americans. Now, what one thing the news said, and I'm getting information from articles and from the news and TV. Friday, Tuesday, they had the show that the bank beds, it looks like concentration camps. Friday, they said that Newsom said he wants this care package, the mental health care and drug addiction care, to stop the violence. First, they came for the homeless. They're trying to stop the movement. And I agree, I think it was Damon Hartley that said it doesn't so much depend on us to what extent we're going to fight back. It's more on what the ruling class, the 1%, is going to set forth. So they're going to come out of benevolent ways, kind ways, this CARE Act, this drug addiction treatment that they want to pass in the legislation for all of California. And it will spread. I know it'll spread to the rest of the country. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that as far as racism, I was raised with all nationalities. I was raised with a lot of white kids because I was the next kid. They talked about step parents, half brothers. They talked about how they have a lot of credibility. So a lot of ways I'm really in tune with Anglo Americans. But on the other hand, we have the Socialist Trotskyist Party who stress racism. They don't talk about class. They don't talk about racism used to divide the working class. We have the Communist Party who talks about class, but they don't talk about racism. That's why I mentioned the book Moving Onward from Racial Division to Class Unity. So I'm sorry my voice sounds harsh, but yeah, so it's up to the 1%. But like I said, the health issues, it will shorten the homeless lives, and those medicines, the three medications that I take, they will say all medications could have fatal consequences. All three of my medications are harmful to my health, which is now getting worse. So I am on that. I think we had a Zoom and help with the league. We could bring this up, how we just got it Medicare for what for, so that the youth can suffer the same problems we have. You know, I think maybe we would spend half an hour to an hour on talking about health issues that people will talk about. I know so I have this and I have that, but what I like to say is that We got it, and I don't know, I don't have all the solutions, but I believe in education, and I do believe, and I am a retired teacher, only with 5 years with an emergency coordinator for the 7th School Unified School District.
Oh,
We got to
okay.
unite the class, and thank you.
Thank you, Miss Yolanda. Okay, so I'm going to call on for the last on this question would be Miss Gloria, since she hasn't spoken. And then we're going to go into our third question, okay?
Storm also was on list with her. But
I could just wait until the third question. I'm not in a rush.
that's fine. Thank you. I just didn't
Thank
want to
you.
miss you.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to mention that I think the whole the development of or the rolling out of fascism is really very different in different areas, and I think that it's the media that many times the bourgeois media that kind of skews, what we see. I wanted to focus on the border violence and what's happening now. These laws that are put in place by those that are in control of corporations. I recall a little bit of what the State of the Union covered. A whole bunch of it was regarding Ukraine and trade and sanctions, and how people are seeing the whole thing about the war in Ukraine. One of the things I think that is really important is that people are able to see the vision of how we can reconstruct this society. And part of it is we're going to have to deal with the wannabe 1%ers, right? The ones that really feel that it's a perfect system because they see so much success with other people. I think we really have to push forward with the morality question of how people are being killed at the border. They're being starved. They're being blamed for not having work. There's a lot of confusion over some people not supposedly not wanting to work because of pandemic and the freebies that were given to them, which is a bunch of lies. I think we have to really try very hard to deal with ground-based information in our communities. We are in a war at home, and sometimes it's kind of hard to understand, just a perspective like from a university student, just as an example, that things are usually taken care of, and you're indoctrinated to believe that the system is going to continue to work for you. I think we have to challenge a lot of things, and I think we have to be more aware of what is evolving in this country. And I do believe we are in a fascist situation right now, and it's going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do see a couple others for stack. We're going to go into the third question, and you'll be at the top of the stack for your comments. Okay, so we do see you. Okay, very good, everybody. So just the setup for this, for question number 3. After Biden's State of the Union address, Talita Rashad, who's a member of the squad, gave the progressive response. She called her caucus, quote, the Working Families Party, and stressed that in order for Congress to deliver for the people, the Working Families Party needs to be in the majority. She also called out the problem of Republican and corporate Democrat obstruction. Consider whether part of this solution is to recruit, support, and elect non-corporate financed individuals into the Democratic Party as a path to class power. Question number 3, how can we organize politically, and what tools are needed? Economic, political, social, ecological, to move the revolutionary process towards transformative change, to hold our victory against counter-revolution. Let me read it again. How can we organize politically and what tools are needed? Economic, political, social, ecological, to move the revolutionary process towards transformative change, to hold our victory against counter-revolution. Okay, so we'll start from our stack that we had.
Yeah, why don't I read the stack at this point? I have Storm. We did have Alicia. I don't know if they still want to speak. We don't hear from you, we'll take you off stack, followed by Ethel, Ran, Sevi, and Eric.
Okay.
That's who I see so far. Chat me up or put your hand up if I've missed you. I cannot see you waving if you're waving at your screen.
Okay. All right, well, let's start with Storm.
Hi, I just want to speak to the tools that we need to, get changed. I feel like the most important tool that we need those people in power to acknowledge what's going on. I feel like a lot of times people in power, they don't realize how much power that they actually have, or they know how much power they have and they use it to only the advantage of themselves, how they can benefit themselves, but they cannot benefit themselves without benefiting the world. In my opinion. I also feel like that that once, someone previously spoke to this in the conversation when they said we're the ones here voluntarily having this conversation. They're not. And I feel like if they were here having this conversation and hearing from the people who it affects the most, we're at the, not to say like all of us, but a lot of the times like the lower class, we're at the bottom of the barrel, we're getting the back ends, and we're the ones pushing for the change, but the people who are in power aren't the ones pushing for the change. We're out there with the posters and the signs. We're out there benefiting. They are just in the office watching, and it doesn't seem like they're doing a lot of doing.
Very good. So you
Sorry.
got, okay.
Yeah, next we have Ethel. I'm sorry, did you want to say something? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Storm like the math ain't mathing.
Ethel, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I felt like there was somebody else you called, but I can't remember the order. I think one of the things we've been talking about today is building on our strengths. And so when I think about 26 million people hit the streets in 2020 to not only protest the wanton murder of not only Brother Floyd, but countless others that that people became aware in their psyche. My God, our government is killing people in our name. No, we reject that. And not only one day, but months and months. And that 26 million not only protested in the midst of a pandemic, but then we had something else very unique happen. That rolled into the ballot box. And the ruling class had a absolute conniption. Our unity, our class went to the ballot box, rejected a zip damn fool, not once, but twice in 2021 to elect the first Black representative from the state of Georgia since Reconstruction under just horrendous conditions. When people say, what are the tools? Let's talk about this. The tools that were used then, protest. The tools that were used then, political education. We educated ourselves all throughout that process. The tools that were used then was even to get our brothers and sisters to forget them, the election thing, because them cows don't represent us anyway. We not only put people in, but we're so damn effective, they had to organize a coup that is continuing to this day to go on to disrupt and dismantle that process. We need to reject the idea that we are ineffective. When our class comes together, organized on, someone said, critical needs, basic needs, we make things happen. We act and function as a class who understands it, has an interest, and stood on that. That is intolerable to the ruling class. And that's what we want to do much more of. Every time they come and tell us, you're a bunch of drug addicts, You guys are been in and out of jail. You're a bunch of dummies. All of those things, wear it as a badge of courage and organize that group to understand we are the ones that's reconstructing this bad boy. And I'm being really nice for the whole crew. What's in our favor? Everything that we can imagine. We got these doggone tools that my forefathers and foremothers did not have when they came out of the revolution of the Civil War, but they had a vision of a different society. Now we got these tools and we can reconstruct that. That is ours. That belongs to your generation, the young people that's on this call. That's your future. It to be organized cooperatively and to the benefit of humanity. And we have to disarm these damn war makers. We are the peacemakers. Forget we can be. We are the peacemakers, but we got to make our intent and our interests felt on a political level. That means we got to hold government accountable. So those are some tools. Let's not throw out any of those tools. Let's not throw out the successes we had, but rather make them work towards our interests on a sustained basis. We need our own independent party, but let's do the building blocks to facilitate that process and reject this idea, oh, we can't win. That's just the rulers trying to hold us back and trying to put more drugs, like they deploy drugs in our community. If they can do this miseducation and disinformation, it's far more effective than their small chemicals. It's long lasting. And we've got to have the political education to bust that stuff up. I'm done.
Very good.
Okay, sorry, let me stop the timer. Next we have Rand, followed by Sevi, Eric, Gideon, Jasmine, and Chase. That's who I see on the list now.
Wiley asked to get on stack as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm gonna put Wiley after Chase. Rand, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to point to chat much earlier here that I dropped a quote from a man that influenced me a great deal in the past. I come from a labor movement in Southwestern Michigan. A bunch of UAW plants were organized in the late 60s and early 70s. And General Gordon Baker II, his name, not his rank, had said and caught me, and even this day, reach out, clasp hands, lock arms, stand shoulder to shoulder, and march forward in our common interest. Ignore all that attempt to divide us. And that was very effective when we all in a plant were under the thumb of the same administration, regardless of their heritage or background. And the hands that were in the production were disregarded, but for the fact that they were being able to make profit off. But they effectively tried to divide us. And this was a slogan that has stayed with me for and will to my dying day, that we're now in a situation where the common interests that we've seen in the plants in the past are now on a national and worldwide scale. And we have to emphasize that to the most basic fundamental fact that we have a common interest, regardless of any differences we may have, to march forward for our future. Ignore all those that attempt to divide us. Thank you for the time limit.
Thank you.
Okay, Sevi, please go ahead.
So I wanted to speak to the second question as a person with disabilities. I have fibromyalgia and hyperacusis, two chronic pain conditions which make my life very challenging. And I was in psychotherapy, and my therapist recommended that I take a neuroplastic healing class. I did take that class. I learned a lot of skills, but I want to speak to the ableism of that class and to the ableism of our capitalist society. Okay, as a disabled person, that class, I felt like the message I got in that class is your life does not have value in this system unless you learn to overcome your disabilities, unless you learn to, get rid of your fibromyalgia through this method and go back to living a normal life. And I want to call bullshit on that idea. because my life does have value, regardless of whether or not I cure myself of my fibromyalgia and my hyperacusis. And I also want to speak to the fact that during the pandemic, even though I want to acknowledge it's been hard for lots of folks and lots of folks have died, but for me, as a person living with these two chronic conditions, being able to attend Zoom meeting for worship with my faith community, being here with all of you from the League of Revolutionaries on my computer, where I can control the volume and where my ears can be safe from pain, is wonderful. And that's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you.
All right. Eric is next.
Okay.
You go ahead, Eric.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Eric Franklin II, and I'm a junior biology major, chemistry minor from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I am also a student at Howard University. Mr. Jackson is also my teacher. So yeah, in reference to question number 3, I just wanted to say, in order for change to happen, the marginalized groups of each society must come together because we already make up the majority. We are the ones who are greater in number already. So working together socially also brings each and every oppressed group together and fighting for change, fighting for what's right. Like that's what we have to do as a majority. There is no other way. If we are already the majority, we're the one that's already ruling. So there are white people that are also found to be lesser by their own kind. However, the color of their skin still has power to make people listen. So with that said, they should also be working together with us to fight for change, right? Because oppressed races alone will not suffice. Black race alone will not suffice. Asian race alone will not suffice. Hispanic, Native American, etc. Those races alone won't suffice. We all have to come together as a whole to create a majority to overthrow. Those who know people in the ruling class should make connections with politicians or Congress for political change. Have them speak out about what's right and what's wrong. They are the ones on the big screen. Those are the people that have the big faces. So what they say can have a real impact on what goes on in government. Celebrities, big time faces, all of those type of people should be speaking out, should be helping us. What I'm trying to say is get to something greater. Those are the people of the ruling class that need to speak out for marginalized groups. Like together we will prevail. There's honestly no other way, in my opinion, unless we get those people that are already in power as well. The more people in power we get to join the majority, the less of a chance the rest of them have to create a counter revolution against the transformative movement that we're trying to create. The COVID vaccine is the perfect example of this, by the way. To me, with that situation, they advertise and mandate the vaccine in order to gain the majority. And then to encourage the majority to convince the minority that taking the vaccine is the right decision in order to stop the spread of the virus. So once the majority has won, the minority is not able to counter-revolutionize the movement of taking the vaccine. It's harder to fight it or live unvaccinated peacefully because the majority is going to always be there to fight against it. So in my opinion, we should come together with the vision, not that we are already oppressed and lesser than anyone in the world, but a vision that we have the power and have always had the power. And this world is already ours and, has always been ours. And with those thoughts, we can turn them into actions. And with that, rule the world. So that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was great. I think what Eric really said, I mean, it was breathtaking because in my chest, what I felt is a message of hope, right? The devil's biggest job is to kill, steal, and destroy. And if he takes our hope away from us for a future that looks different from what we're experiencing now, he's already won. And I think what Eric echoes is that, like he said, we have the power. We do hold the power. But as long as they convince us that we don't, it'll obstruct us from really engaging in a movement that is gonna really be beneficial to all of humanity. And I think, and this is something for, I'm gonna shut up and let everybody else go, but I think what he uplifted was something very provocative, and I didn't think about it in this way, but how can we, as a way of organizing politically, create divisions within the ruling class, right? because when we talk about division and uniting, we have to realize that we have divisions amongst each other as working class people. But in this new moment, right, where everything is precarious, when capitalism is imploding, right, it gives us an opportunity to harp on or use the divisions within the ruling class to be able to gain support. And what might that look like? And I do think, and I'm gonna really shut up here. I do think that on the question of organizing politically with respect to economic, political, social, and ecological, movement building, we talked about there is going to be a space for engaging electorally as well, but knowing that that is not the only means by which we seize power, right? So that this is something that we do have to confront and we do have to talk about, right? So yeah, I'll stop there. Go ahead.
Very
So
good.
a couple of people have asked about the order of the stack. At this point, we have Gideon, followed by Jasmine, Chase, Wiley, Sydney, and Kaya or Kaya. I hope I'm saying your name right. If you still want to speak. So Gideon, please go next.
Thank you. And I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Gideon Prempe. I'm from New York. I'm a freshman English major at Howard University, or at the Howard University. And I just wanted to say that, like, on the concept of power, I feel like in essence, like, power truly isn't real. Like, it's a social thing, so it truly isn't real. And because of that, like, us as a working class, we can redefine the definition of power, reshape it or whatever, and to the point where, like, we have it. And I feel like that is not a dangerous scenario, because when the bourgeoisie has the power, they're using it as abuse and inflicting it on other people. However, if the majority, like I think Eric was saying, as the majority having the power, once we gain that power, it shifts into once again what we want, a classless society. So there's not really a after effect or a whiplash of, like, when all these other people, quote unquote, aren't in power. It's no, now we all just have, like, we all just enjoy each other, like we all just get to live. And that's why, like, part of it, I'm not gonna lie, is like, I'm not really too politically inclined in terms of, like, electoral and all that stuff in political parties. But I do think that while there is merit in, like, having your own people, or like people from, like, these communities that like have been known to be, like, suffering and things like that, gaining status and growing in power and things like that, and doing that in, like, a political manner. I think, for one, people tend to think that it's too slow. For two, people tend to think that, like, once you get to that point, you kind of forgot where you come from. So, like, how much are you really going to help us? And for three, like, you don't need it. And I'm not saying that we got to go, like, fight a war, which is also possible. I'm not saying that, though. I'm a pacifist, but I'm not saying we got to fight a war. But I do think that, like, we as a community have enough power in our own right. Like, we don't have to depend on somebody else from our community to throw into the fire and try and go get the power for us. If we are, like we're saying, trying to unionize, I guess, and trying to, like, just come together as a group, which we've done. I forgot who said it, but they were referencing, like, just the political education that we've had over the iconic summer, let me say, that, like, things like that happen, things like community, like, grassroots organizations, like, donating and things like that. Like, money is a large, like, source of power, and that's kind of, like, it's one of the most defining, like, power sources that we have, where it's like, if you have money, then you think you have power. And working class people, as a majority, as the people literally working, like, we have money, we just feel a little bit, like, scared, because maybe this is not the usual way that we're used to seeing how our money is to be used. Maybe, like, the people in power, they're hoarding the money, all that type of stuff. So it's like, you think you have to do that as well, and that's not true. If you can envision something, which you might be a little bit scared to do, but if you have people around you who are also doing the same thing, going into that fire with you, then you feel confident in yourself. That's why you can, like, give money to your family, give money to your friends, but maybe someone across the country a little scared. No, if they're on the same mindset as you, if they're on the same page as you guys are all working together. So we all do this, like, at a small scale, I think, but it's kind of just the trust of, like, well, the other people have my back. But I feel like the fight against being oppressed, like, those people will have your back. If we can envision something and we're not scared to do it, like, it will come to fruition. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Next is Jasmine, who's been waiting a long time, and then Chase. Jasmine, go ahead, please. Jasmine, please unmute. Can't hear you. Hope you're there. Couple more seconds. We'll come back to you, Jasmine. Going to go to Chase. Chase, please. Oh, Jasmine just unmuted. Go ahead, Jasmine. I saw you on mute. So now I'm afraid to leave. I don't know what to do. Go.
My name is Troy. I'm not Jasmine, but the host keeps asking me to unmute.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to go?
Well, if you're someone named Jasmine asked to speak, and that's the name that's on your window. So your hand is up, and whoever you are, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Now my name is Troy. I don't know why it says Jasmine.
Hey, Troy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but that's why I
Somebody
was
should
so
do
confused.
something about that.
I was literally just sitting here. I was like, who's Jasmine and why are they not speaking? But yeah, I wanted to speak on what Eric said. In regards to POC solidarity, I disagree to some extent. I feel like the different issues that different races deal with they're too intricate for like just to be lumped together as one big group. Like the issues that Chinese people deal with are vastly different than the issues that like Black people deal with, or even Hispanic people, right? So I feel like there can be POC solidarity in like some special instances, but for the most part, I think that they should be separate. In regards to their movements. Like I just don't think that a movement that tries to serve everybody would serve anybody. Do you understand like what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, we understand. So you don't think that there's a potential for unity among all working class people because we have racial differences?
I think that for all working class people, like the objective should be for everybody to work together for certain economic issues because that brings us together. But I feel like we shouldn't be working together on all issues because all issues don't affect us the same. Like, it's not advantageous, like besides being a good person, right? It's not advantageous for a Chinese person to really want like to focus on police brutality because it doesn't happen to them as much, right? But there are issues in the Chinese community that don't happen to us that we shouldn't focus on as much. So I feel like we should come together on issues that bring us together, but I feel like people try and put us together too often. There's issues that need to be handled separately sometimes.
What is that?
Can I talk?
Who is that? Kennedy Haya?
This is Kennedy Massey.
Go ahead, Kennedy.
I want to counteract that a little bit. Okay, because I can only speak in the scope of Black people because I'm Black. So I'm just going to relate it to this issue. For example, we've been dealing with race issues within the United States for forever. That's not unbeknownst to anyone. But let me think. For example, like when we were doing marches, it wasn't until we had a lot of Jewish people who came out to support African Americans or Black people during this time. It's the support of other people that pushes us forward. It's the support of people from different communities acknowledging our issues and doing something to change it for the betterment of our society, because that's what we're talking about at the end of the day, the betterment of our society. For us to deal with our issues alone and say that you know, some people, we shouldn't all get involved with, you know, this person's issues, this person's issues. Of course, not everyone can relate on the same level whatsoever, but just that extra support can push you a long way, especially if it's support from people who are in positions of power or closer to people in positions of power. Like, for instance, it was the wives of congressmen and of people making legislator that helped, like, you know, fight for the cause. It was that extra support that was needed in order to help create change in our nation. So to say that one issue that you know, one group may face doesn't relate to another, I would argue that it does, because at the end of the day, this is the world we have to live in. This is the country that we live in, that we choose to live in, right? Why wouldn't we want everybody to be on an equal playing field? Why wouldn't we want everybody to, you know, I don't know. I think it's important that you have different people in your corner. That it's not just a fight that you're in alone. That's what Black people have been feeling for a while, that this is just a fight we're in by ourselves. It's the support of different communities that pushes us forward as a nation, that creates, that makes us, that unites us as a nation.
Very good. I'm gonna just take liberty to make just a comment in light of what we've been discussing. So I do it too. The young man that was that had brought this up about since you were cloaked under the name Jasmine Smith, so I didn't catch your name, but
it's Troy.
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 I think that what you were describing, and you know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we all have cultural differences. I think part of the problem is that we've been just, as a group as a whole, we've been miseducated as well. You know, when you talk about, you know, the Asian culture, they have been, you know, part of this country and part of, you know, the building of this capitalist system on their backs as well for a long time, right? And we all have cultural differences, but a lot of us don't understand where we all historically have contributed to the building of this nation, as well as have the equal way we've all been oppressed by it as well. And the whole thing across cultures is to find our commonality, which, and that includes, you know, white Americans as well, is that if they don't unite with us, we're all going down, we're all sinking with the ship, because it's not about, for the ruling class, is about maintaining power. And if the tools of divide and conquer stop working, well, you know, we're all just going to be in jail, or however whatever oppressive means that they can impose on us, that they'll try. So we absolutely have to find our commonality, and we have to unite, you know, whether we say unite as a class, but unite based on our common humanity against this system that's, you know, trying to kill us, I think. Okay, go ahead and go back to your list, Peter.
Okay. Really excellent comments, everybody. Sorry for my throatiness. I'm getting over a cold. I have Chase, followed by Wiley, Sydney, Kaya, and Sevi.
Hello. So I am under Chase, but it's also a different name type situation. My name is Sydney, and I'm a student at George Mason University. But what the last comment that was mentioned, that was what I was going to touch on. I was actually talking to some friends about this the other day, and it's a silly comparison. But I feel as if capitalism, like how you said, equally has affected every group, but we just haven't been told about it. Like, we don't see the unity. I mean, K through 12 education isn't telling us this. I wasn't able to learn about the ways that we'd all equally been exploited until college. But then again, I can afford a college education. I think I know education is elitist. And to me, it feels like a responsibility to educate the masses on this is how we've collectively been hurt in the same ways. But like, okay, think about like for the military, for example, it'll maybe prey on students that can't afford health insurance, or they go into just people who need the resources they can offer. But same with coal miners in Appalachia, you know, like their land has been degraded in the same way that Native Americans have. And I'd say like they're now it's like people are facing issues like black lung, but they would rather, you know, give away their life in the pursuit of coal mining because that gets them money. Then maybe they can't afford to go to college, they aren't properly educated, you know, but they don't see that that's a similarity because their school isn't teaching them. We don't see it in a similar way of like, imagine capitalism being like a boyfriend and the groups of people in the world are kind of like the two girls that he's cheating on, and now it's like the girls trying to hurt the other girls. But it's like, why aren't y'all pointing your fingers at the boyfriend? Like, silly comparison, but we just don't know, like, what, like, society isn't interested in canceling issues. It's interested in canceling groups of people, and that's upkept by the upper strata, because society today, like the Tonys, Gemeinschaft, like in present day society, there's an upper strata, there's a lower strata. The upper creates the norms, the lower just kind of in a hegemonic way upkeeps them. If they tell us that issues today are at fault of groups of people, of course there's never going to be unity. But then you got to think the media also encourages that comment, because I mean, look at all types of, like, we say that there can't be a lack of biases, but it's like, I think one, admitting where your perspective comes from is important. And that's how I think they were able to get through on pushing a narrative that is quote unquote, like, whatever. But yeah, I think since the upper strata is in charge of kind of the media and what gets put out, because we think we have power in the sense that they choose to amplify some people, but they only amplify voices that agree with them. And the few people that are left in society that think critically, that question the norms of today, you don't see CNN posting their tweets. You see them just kind of parroting what they would be saying. And then it's this huge echo chamber of let's cancel these groups of people. And I think when we look at the people of power, we're like, why aren't they helping us out? Of course they aren't helping us out. Like if we were to really see the strength in our numbers, we could do even at the lowest level politics and dirty game. And I was talking about this last week. ANCs, they're, you know, in DC, like possibly getting paid off to give a green light on a bar that wants to come in, because like some people just go into the game for the checks. And so I think on every aspect, or white envelopes on every aspect, we just need we don't need to go in like policy changing or reform. Okay, it's cool, it's important, but the strength in our numbers, like our US dollar, like the collectiveness, I guess, that we saw over the protests that happened in this past year, if we had that and the brains to see how we as a whole have been exploited and oppressed, we could do something, but we just don't see that. So I think it really is up to the few people that do to get together and create a whole other system, I guess, but with rules and leadership, because I think the lack of leadership is how issues that have a large following, for example, Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, like these are big issues that we've had in the past, but there weren't a strict set of rules. So maybe that's how they fell apart, because I mean, the few people that did move forward with a few set of rules, they had targets on their backs, and now we haven't been told. We've, you know, the 10-point plan has been demonized. Black students aren't learning about it until I went to an HBCU, I'd never heard about anything else. Yeah, we're just not being educated. We don't see it. The few people that were sort of successful were killed. So it's not even that hope is gone, but it's like we don't even know where to look, I guess. We really do. Just like the people have done things in the past. What someone was saying earlier, we have the potential to move forward, but we just haven't been taught. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm a little confused. So that was Sydney, am I correct?
Yes.
Next I have Wiley, Kaya, and Sevi, and it's now 1 o'clock.
Yes.
But I'll leave that up to you folks.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this third question is very important, and I wanted to give a concrete example of what's happening here in Chicago, where I'm at. There is the class is waging a heroic struggle. That is, when I say the class, I'm talking about parents, teachers, community folks around the question of COVID. And it's a united struggle, and it involves people from all sections of the community, Latino, Black, white, and so forth. And they're taking it on. I mean, they're refusing to allow their children and the people who teach them to be exposed to the virus. They're refusing to allow relaxation of the mask mandate. And they're fighting tooth and nail with the powers that be in this city on that question. And as I said, they're being quite successful. And I make that point because part of the thing, the movement is objective. People are not going to allow themselves to be kicked around. They're going to fight back, and that's going to happen. So I give this example because I'm sure what's happening in Chicago is happening in other places. The other thing I'd like to comment on is the point made by the young man, Troy, I believe his name was. I think, and people have already spoken to it, but I think the important thing to recognize in that is a question of mutual support. That, an injury against one is an injury to all. And we should feel obligated that if that Chinese person is being stumped on, then we have an obligation to get that foot off his neck.
Yes.
And that's the way we have to look at it. I mean, and the basis of that, again, is a unity on the basis of class. That is, we all have to work and struggle for a living against a system that deprives us of the means to make a living. And that's what unites us. And that transcends any division of color, ethnicity, or anything. Because when it comes out of the bottom line, we must eat to live. And in order to eat, we must work. So, I mean, I think we have to really understand that an injury to one is an injury to all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next person on staff.
Okay, next person is Kaya, and it looks like Sevi finished it off.
Yes.
So we'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, I also wanted to respond to what Troy said. I completely understand what he was saying, and I agree that out of all the oppressed groups in America, our experiences are so different. Like, Black people are oppressed in different ways than Hispanic people are oppressed, and women are oppressed. But that is also where the issue of intersectionality comes in. Like, Black men might not experience the oppression that women experience from the patriarchy, but then there are Black women. I am a Black woman, I am oppressed from all different sides. And I think that one of the biggest tools that white people and that the upper class use to oppress us is by separating us. And they have created this hierarchy of oppressed people. Like, there's so much anti-Blackness within other communities, within Hispanic communities. And even though they're oppressed, they still see themselves as higher than Black people. Black men sometimes see themselves as higher than Black women. And the only way to really unite is to support all of the issues. And how we are common is that all of our issues do come from the same place. They're caused by the same people, they're caused by the same systems in America. So I think it is important to see other groups' issues and to support them in that, because like you said, to liberate one of us, we have to liberate all of us. To liberate all of us, we have to liberate one of us.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. So we're going to end it with Sevi.
So I would like to speak to Troy's comment. There's a book that you might be interested in reading. It's called The Politics of Experience by R.D. Laing. R.D. Laing was a Scottish psychiatrist, And he talked about how when you're sitting across the room from another person, you really can't see their experience of the world. And I did a Facebook status update. It was funny. I said that he was woke before wokeness was even a thing. And he, and I think this goes off of the previous speaker's comment about intersectionality. So, I mean, it's basically like, can I, as a white disabled person, listen to the experiences of able-bodied Black people, and then can they turn around and listen to my experiences as a person, as a disabled person with fibromyalgia and hyperacusis, and how that affects my experience of the world. So that's what I wanted to say.
Very good. Okay, you guys, I guess it got good to us because we went a little over a half hour past our time. We will be putting a 4 brief survey questions, evaluation questions in the chat for everyone. That's a cue for tech to go ahead and do that. It'd be great if you can either, respond to any of those in the chat. We will also follow up with an email for evaluations. For these type of events, we, definitely want to get better. We did have a few little technical difficulties because we had a lot of people trying to get in, which is a good problem to have. So also, I want to remind people to please check out Learna. That's lrna.org. That is our website for articles, new articles, and upcoming events. They will be posted there. And I think that's all that I have. Thank you for everyone for coming and joining and sharing your thinking with us, which is very important. This is, part of the most important thing that we do is to educate ourselves, to stay aware, to raise our consciousness, and to move forward. Anthony, you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much said it all. I just want to shout out to all of my students who jumped in and really engaged. Thank you for sharing all of what's up here. I know it can be difficult sometimes to enter into a space and grapple with things that can seem abstract and theoretical. But I think that y'all did a really good job at showing us the realities that we live and how all of these things are not just abstract theoretical concepts, but how they really impact our day-to-day lives. You all did phenomenally. I'm so appreciative of everybody's engagement on the call. And hopefully we will continue to engage in the days to come, and that working class unity that we hope to have and we hope to build. This could be a microcosm of that, a small example of the possibility of that type of unity. So yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Love y'all.
Yes, and hey, a shout out to Anthony's dog in the background and his
He's ready to body, okay?
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye,
all.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
job,
Really good.
mods.
you.
Great
Thanks,
job.
Great job.
Yes. Great job, Deeper Dive.
So many young people on here too.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Howard in the house.
Some of my people couldn't get in. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, I know several people who wanted to.